Southside 457.
Did you know that the South Side on Lamar is a National Historic Building?
This building tells a story.
I need a story to connect to with my heart.
There are so many stories in this building.
I wanted to teach other people how to naturally love themselves, and so I ventured into the field of opening my own spot.
There are people in this building with a passion to share what they know.
When I share my knowledge and my skills and my gift, I'm serving my purpose.
Preachers, teachers, architects, attorneys, engineers, artists of all kinds in this building.
What makes this place tick to me and makes it exciting is the combination of so many different kinds of people.
It's like a melting pot.
It's like a melting pot.
15 years, I've never regretted being here at Southside.
Welcome to the Southside 457 podcast. I'm your host, Walter Johnson Jr. Let's get it on. You can't miss the princess.
Listen, Linda, listen.
Southside 457.
Welcome back to the Southside 457 podcast. I'm your host, Walter Johnson Jr. And today we have a very special guest, Miss Jane the Hope Hamilton. How are you, Jane?
Michelle said Hope is on a comeback. I'm good.
Hope is on the comeback?
That's what she said. She said that Wednesday night, yeah.
Okay. So, Jane, you work for Matthew Southwest.
I do.
Okay. So, tell me this. Tell me about the first time you came to the South Side. Did you come to the South Side when you started working, then you got introduced to the building? Or, what was your first?
No, actually, this must have been 06, I want to say.
Oh, wow.
2006.
That's a long... You're not that old, are you?
What? We're not going there. I just look like this. It was.
You had to be like 5 or 6.
I was very young. No, it was 2006, and I was the campaign manager for what was called the Democratic Coordinated Campaign, which was a slate of judges, along with Craig Watkins, who became the first African American district attorney in the state of Texas. And so I was, doing some walking and getting to know neighbors in different areas. And ended up in the Cedars, and I was like, oh my gosh, I love this area. I love the vibe. I loved this building. I loved everything about it. And that was the first time that I really got to know Southside on Lamar, and I'd say the area. And then it ended up being some years later, maybe like a couple of years later, is when I purchased my first condo in the Cedars.
Okay.
Down the way.
So you live in the Cedars?
I don't anymore, no, but I love the area.
Okay.
Yeah. And
then you work currently for Matthew Southwest.
I do.
Okay, so before we talk about that, so what's some of your history like? Because we were sitting here, I didn't know that you ran for Congress. Tell me a little bit about that. But before we get there, yeah. Tell me what was the story that led up to there? Like why
Yeah.
what made you want to run for Congress?
Right?
Yeah, but
That's what I asked.
Tell me about this woman that led up to that woman wanting to run.
Right. So I grew up in New Orleans, and I went to school called McMain, and down the street was another school called Forshey Public School. My school was a magnet public school. Forshey was a public school. So Lil Wayne went to my school.
Lil Wayne.
And he and Baby was down the street. So they would come down the street. And I just remember always seeing them, like, where are y'all's books? Like, they never had any books. So someone was explaining how they got a classroom set. And I'm like, what does that mean? Like, oh no, the books stay at school. It's just the classroom set of books. Oh. And I just remember thinking, like, this is ridiculous. Like, what is the concept of, so the fact is like, I'm at a magnet school.
Yeah.
We're learning with take the books home to do your homework. So I just remember hearing that and feeling like something's wrong. And
you were in high school?
I was in high school. And from that point on, in my high school, my school went from 7th through 12th grade. You had to test to get in, but it was 7th through 12th. Forshey was 9th.
So you went to
through
the
12th.
smart school? Is that the one?
You know,
Yeah.
just take a little test, a little something, you know. But that just never left my mind, and it just stayed with me, which really resulted in my interest in politics, because I wanted to know who made the decisions about what schools got what and how, and that just led me down the path of policy. And from there, I went to college, Lake Forest College, very small liberal arts college, north of Chicago, about 45 miles north. Real cold. I didn't know any better. My parents went there. It's a long story, but they tricked me.
Wow. So what was that like going, because the winters are different. It's a different kind of winter in the
I had
Midwest.
no idea. I didn't visit. They were my parents. My older sister, who is 7 years older than me,
Yeah.
went to HBCU. She went to Clark Atlanta, and she was the track star, played tennis, all of the things. And you know, I remember my parents saying, "You really should look at Lake Forest." My brother was 2 years younger. He already said he wanted to stay in Louisiana. He did not want to leave. So I start looking into this school, and it's beautiful. It's small, but I don't know cold because I'm from New Orleans. So I see snow. I'm like, oh, that's beautiful. Don't know a thing. Man, I get there. I'm a freshman, and I will never forget the wind chill. Like, it's cold, right? So let's say it's like 20 degrees. But then it's like a negative wind chill. And the wind is coming off the lake because the school is on Sheridan Road, which is on the lake. So it was cold. It was a great experience. I definitely was homesick, you know, because I didn't visit. So I had no idea. My parents were like, oh, just trust me. I got a legacy scholarship. So that experience really stretched me because I remember wanting to go home. And the black kids who went to Lake Forest, it's a predominantly white school. The black kids who went to this school was a mix, right? Either they were from like Southside Chicago, and it wasn't many, or they were from like boarding schools all over the country. And I'd never interfaced with black people that went to boarding schools. So they were very much more exposed, I would say, than I was. So that experience really stretched me in terms of what my comfort level. But I majored in poli-sci with a double major of comms. And as soon as I graduated, I went on my first campaign, and it never stopped.
So you went on your first campaign?
Right out of school.
What year did you graduate?
2000. He said, you're still trying to get to my age. Oh, it's okay.
Okay. I mean, it's okay.
I'm
Not
very
everybody,
proud.
not everybody can do math that fast. It's
I know.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
How old were you when you graduated? I'm just curious.
You know what?
So you went on to do. You came back to Texas to run, or where did you?
Yeah. So long story short, I graduate from college and I go home. Right. Okay. I'm chilling, but I'm like, okay, what's the plan? What am I going to do? In many cases, if you want to work on the Hill, like on Capitol Hill in DC, you kind of need an in. It's an access point. Yeah. I didn't know anybody. You know, I'm just a girl from New Orleans. I didn't have those contacts.
Baby or Lil Wayne can hook you up?
Nah, they weren't really doing that like that. So they were busy doing other things. So I remember talking to a friend, and she was like, you know, just go, you should find a campaign to work on, you know? Yeah. So I started doing research. This group, strategic consulting group, came up, and it was like a campaign school for 2 weeks. They train you, then they detail you out. Well, guess where it was? Back in Chicago, where I just came from. So I go to Chicago, I do this training, and they detail me to Dallas. And my first campaign ever was David Kane, former state senator David Kane. It was in 2000. But what the school taught you, the classes, it was like, what is a universe? Which is, a universe is a group of people that you're trying to go vote, right? What is a target number? The target number is the number that you need to put into your spreadsheet so that you can get to a certain number, which is a win number. Your win number is 50 plus 1, because all you need is half and one more to beat the other person. So then there's all kind of other things that go into that. But essentially, that's what I learned in the 2-week training. Came to Dallas, first race, 2000, former state senator David Kane. He wins. And it was, you know, all, as they say, the rest is history.
So you were working on his campaign?
I worked on his campaign, that's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so what about you? when you ran?
So when I ran, that was 2 years ago.
Congratulations on that, by the way, too,
Thank
David
you.
King.
Thank you. Yeah, David Kane. David Kane got redistricted the next year, so they drew his lines. They got him out. They didn't. They couldn't beat him at the ballot, so they went to the
You got to move on.
census.
Yeah.
And they redrew the line, so that's how they got rid of David Kane.
Yeah.
Anyway, and that's something that we're very familiar with in Texas because that's what happens in Texas is redistricting. But so
How are they able to do that?
well, because you have a census that happens every 10 years. And once you fill out the information for the census, they look at the count, they decide, how many people, you look at how many people you have in your state. And then from there, you start dividing up for representation.
Yeah.
And Texas typically gains population, so we typically gain a seat. So there are all kind of, tricks to how in a very majority with high majority minority counties, we still end up being so very red. That's another
That's
lesson
funny.
for another day.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, anyways.
Yeah, it's called gerrymandering.
Yeah.
And gerrymandering is typically not a good thing for people who look like you and I.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, when you ran,
When I ran, which feels like many moons ago, actually, it feels like a long time ago, but
what gave you the confidence to run in the first place?
yeah, so, I started off wanting to be a part of policy, right? Called a friend was like, look, just try to get on the campaign. Best advice ever, right? Because I got on the campaign and then the person that I worked for won and I was like, oh, I could go work for him. Nope. But I met some people along the way. I met this lady named Miss Dorothy Dean. God rest her soul. I miss her so much. And I met her because I knocked on her door, just like, hi, just on some voting stuff. And I remembered her and I called her up. I said, I really want to do policy work. She said, I know who you could call. Call this guy, Lemuel. Lemuel now works for Representative Davis. I called him up. I'm like, Miss Dorothy Dean told me to call you. He's like, you know what? Helen Giddings has a job open. So then from that point, I called her, I interviewed, and then my first policy job ever was in 2001 working for former state representative Helen Giddings, who is my dear friend and mentor. And from 2001, I met some other people in Austin who were policy people. One person worked for Martin Frost. They interviewed me. I went to D.C. and my first job in D.C. at the age of 22 was the executive assistant to the House Democratic Caucus. And from there, I just kept going. So that's why I ended up running for Congress. It was not planned at all.
So you said you kept going.
Yeah.
Tell us about what kept going. Like
I just worked really hard. I read everything I could get my hands on. I was very interested in sort of like the process of Capitol Hill, like how it worked, how it functioned. That little PBS special, like how does a bill get on Capitol Hill or that thing. It was sort of like that, right? But it was just real. So I worked at the Democratic Caucus, met a lot of people.
I got that cartoon in my mind now.
Yeah, it's that's why we love PBS, Good old civic.
Yeah.
But anyway, I knew people knew that I did campaigns at this point. So Martin Frost, who was very active on the political in Texas, what I would do is I would take a leave of absence from my DC job and I would come and I would work a campaign. Then when the campaign was over, I would go back. So I did that 2 cycles. I ended up getting on the Rules Committee. The House Rules Committee is the stop before any bill can get to the House floor. It doesn't matter what committee you have. It could be appropriations, right? It could be Homeland Security, Armed Services, Ways and Means. You still have to go through the process of the Rules Committee so that your legislation can get to the House floor.
How many bills do you think come through that particular part? And how do you go through all of them?
Yeah, it's a lot of work. I mean, I did not sleep. I was, 20-something years old, so I didn't need, my dad would always say, sleep when you die.
Yeah.
So I never could complain about being
And you were
tired.
passionate about what you did.
I was passionate about it because this is the thing. We are truly a land of laws, right?
Yeah.
Everything we do, there is nothing that we do in this life that a law hasn't touched. We are impacted by laws. I wanted to understand that. And I felt like I needed to understand that, right? Because
So why not an attorney?
because an attorney, that's a different role, right? What you're doing as an attorney.
Enforcing or like
There you
yeah.
go. What I wanted to do is be on the front end before you could even have a law enforced. How do we get to that part?
Gotcha.
That's what I wanted to understand. And that's what the Rules Committee in Capitol Hill really helped me understand: legislation, moving policy, who influences policy, how does it come about, what are the different ways that you can have access points. And I'm going to tell you this. There was no better teacher than the Hill. It was grimy.
It's all
People
done.
would
This is
just-
real. This is real life right here.
Man, listen, all the things. And there's nothing to prepare you for that experience. I don't care what my kids decide to do with their life. Both of them will have to have an internship on Capitol Hill. It's just, in my view, it's a necessity. You really learn a lot about yourself because it's a hard place to operate. And if you're someone of integrity, everything is going to be thrown at you at a very young age. People like to figure out what you like, what you don't like, what's going to make you do something. So you going through all this at a young age, 20-something years old. Thank God there was no social media back in the day. But, it's like we did have more liberties to make mistakes, learn things the hard way, right? Without this, this cloud of social media that these kids have now. Can't imagine that.
Biggest lesson working on the Hill.
Everybody you see going up, you're going to see them coming down. You got to treat people right. It could be somebody that comes in when you leave that office to clean up. Hello, how are you? I remember situations with how I would get information from the little people. Because remember, I started off as an executive assistant.
It just flies on the wall, right?
What? I'm in a room, they talking about some real heavy stuff. And I'm like, oh, right? No one's paying attention to me.
Yeah.
I'm not a threat, right? And so that really created in me, which is this quiet sense of an understanding of how to make things move. I'm not somebody that really likes to be out front on things. I love the back. That was a challenge background. That was a challenge when I ran for Congress. Because it's just like that old saying, OGs move in silence.
Yeah.
That's I believe that.
Yeah.
Typically when people are really loud and it just, you ask, is someone going to trust you to give you information, to get something done? And what I learned on the Hill, there was this really quiet power that the people who were really moving weight, like moving policy and legislation, making the deals, you couldn't see them coming. And by the time you looked up and you knew what happened, they were gone. It was over, right? It's too late because they're not talking about it.
Yeah.
They're not talking about it. And that was another one of my biggest lessons. It was like, you don't have to, always talk about what you're going to do. You could just get it done. Now, in 2024, that's not the best because, you need a lot,
social media matters.
It's like, hello, I am so honored and humbled to have this award. It's like, that's where we are these days. But for me, that was never really my way. And that nothing has
I
changed.
don't like it, to be honest, but it's necessary.
It's necessary and it works for some people.
Yeah.
And I think we are living in a time where that's what people need to be interested. You know what I mean? That's what
because that's where they go.
That's right. And they need it. And that is where they go, But I would like them to go to some books too.
Right.
Yeah.
So after being on the Hill, let's fast forward. So the job you have at Matthews Southwest now, what is that role currently?
So, let me say this first.
Okay, say that first. Go.
Decided to run for Congress.
Okay.
You asked me why. The reason why is because I had all this information about how it works, right? And I was like, look, I know this thing. Being on the Rules Committee, you really understand procedure. So I felt like because of my understanding, I could really represent people in Dallas, which really was exciting to me, right? That's why I ran. And because I know understanding and having knowledge is the greatest tool you could possibly ever have if you want to affect change in your community, right? So with that, I decided to run. I tell everyone, if you want to know who your friends are, need something. I mean, need something. Put your name on a ballot. It's nothing else like it. Because people gotta, if they're with you, you're like, okay, be with me. Put your name next to mine, right? So went through that process. 9 people came in the race. I was one of the least familiar. I'd never run for anything. So people were like, how you just gonna get up and run for Congress? Some people didn't understand why I would do it. But again, having a knowledge, I was like, because I am ready. Fast forward, get to a runoff with Jasmine Crockett, who is our wonderful Congresswoman now, representing District 30. And we get to this runoff, and essentially I was outspent. So, like, it wasn't close. It was like 3-1. We get through that. And by the way, let me say this. I'm going to just take this time to say this. People who don't understand politics, they think like, oh, y'all must not get along. Y'all don't like each other. Da-da-da. It's not even like that. Yeah. Like, we literally didn't interface like that, right, at all. Yeah. So I saw her at the convention. I said hi. She said hi. You know, it's all good.
It's diplomacy.
It's right. Like, it's like, you know, I'm like, if we recall, Kamala Harris ran against Biden in the primary, you know? So people, need to just understand that that's politics. You know, you have to move on. If you're somebody that wants to get things done, you're going to move on, period. So come out of that race, I'm like, I'm taking 3 months off. I got maybe 4 phone calls. The thing about being somebody who fixes other people's problems, who is a campaign person, I was a statewide director for Biden, flipped the county in 2006, helped get Wendy Davis elected, campaign manager for Mark Vesey, who was in Congress, did all of this stuff, right? But when you're in that situation, it is very rare for people to say, how can I help you? So now I done used all my political capital for all these people for years, and it's like, it's 23 years in, I didn't win that election. And I don't say I lost because I don't feel like that. Yeah. And God is the master architect of my life, and he has moved so many beautiful, wonderful things that being a girl from New Orleans, I never imagined. And I'm grateful for everything. So of those 4 people, Jack was one. And he said, because he did my first fundraiser with Ron Kirk, he said, hey, I just want to talk. Come out of office. Let's see, what are you doing next? I said, well, I'm taking a break now. But yeah, so happy to talk. So we chatted probably over about, 2 months. Like, I met with him, talked to him again, met with him again. And we landed on me coming in the office and as an employee and working on some housing issues, affordable housing, because that was a policy that kind of thread throughout my career. Mm-hmm. So that's where I started, and that's what I'm still doing now. So things like, models like the Gale Brief, that's a 50 market, 50 affordability. You have Workforce at Bellevue, that's workforce housing, right? We've got Hutchins, low-income housing, and then you've got Mill City. They're doing 50 single homes, like actually building homes.
So while we're talking about that, what is the purpose of that? Because a lot of people don't know. I mean, like there's people in the knowing, and there's people who just kind of benefit from it, and people who maybe not benefit from it. But
in terms of housing,
yes.
So look, Jack is a visionary, and I always say that, and people use that word, but he's the real deal, as you know, right? You interviewed him.
Yeah.
Dude is cold. So he comes in as a developer, and he's not really just like, let me build this building. Yeah. He's like, what are all the things that's happening around?
Yeah, he wants to see the city, like
everything, right? Yeah. Which is amazing. But because he naturally leads with his heart. He's thinking about people,
Yeah.
right? And so this is very non-traditional for a developer at where he is, of his magnitude, to do affordable housing for the right reasons. Because let's be clear, if you're trying to get a margin on affordable housing, good luck. It's hard because it's expensive, right?
Yeah.
It's costly to build.
And it's a lot of risk.
And it's a lot of risk. And you need leveraging points. So you need, if you can take land out of the equation, that's big, because then you're not buying it, right? So if you can have deals with the city where there's some kind of incentive and you're not really paying, market rate, those are good opportunities. But really, the way we look at it as Matthew Southwest is, how do we create thriving communities, right? You want people to be able to live, work, and play where they actually live. There's a lot of, in Dallas, we kind of have this commuter syndrome, because you have all these jobs, but where are people going to live if they're priced out the market? So you expect somebody to come and teach at a public school and commute from where?
Yeah.
But the city is getting so expensive. And what we're not thinking about is that's affecting our children. If this woman, if this teacher, who is wonderful, great, doing this for all the right reasons, is driving into a school 45 minutes away from the school, that's a problem. So Jack thinks about these things. First responders, where do they live? Police, firefighters, workforce that's at Bellevue, right? So he thought about that. The Dallas Police Department is right here. Now you have some workforce housing also right here. That's the kind of, if you have the Omni, where do the people who work at the Omni live? So Jack is always looking for opportunities for us as a company to answer that call. And that really resonated with me. We aligned on that value set.
Yeah.
And I wanted to be a part of that because answering the call for housing is a crisis. We're in a crisis right now.
Don't pause for a second. I'm going to say something.
Yeah.
I felt like you were campaigning just now.
Really? Really?
Yeah, I was like, oh, I'm going to vote for you. I'm going to sign my name right there. So I'm going to be your friend on this one.
Well, what's funny about that? My mom, when we were growing up, it's so funny how things come back as you get older. She would say something like, my nickname in my house is Missy. And so mom called me Missy. She'd be like, Missy, go downstairs and go grab this and bring it up to me. And I'd be like, oh, right. She'd be like, I'll vote for you. That's what she I just like randomly think about that.
They knew it was that's been all.
No, they didn't know. It's just something she would say,
Oh, wow.
But that's interesting because you are introduced to certain concepts, in your home. Subconsciously, I'm not thinking about that. Saying,
But you wanted that vote, huh?
but I went and got what she asked me for because I wanted that vote, right? So anyway, so that's how I came to Matthew Southwest, right? I came to Matthew Southwest because it was just, it was really, I don't know. I feel like, with Jack, I think it's a mutual respect with he and I, and that's a great, dynamic to have when you work for someone, right?
Absolutely.
Because that's a blessing. Absolutely. And I knew I didn't really want to do lobbying work. That was the more organic place for me to go because all my contacts that I have and
It's the easy,
big businesses.
low hanging fruit. Yeah.
Right. So you had a lot of healthcare companies that reached out and different, oil and gas, all of the things. And it just, I'm very mission oriented. And I think that was just, I couldn't do it. It was good money though. I definitely thought about it.
So I know you have kids.
Yeah.
So is like taking the job you have now, is that allow you more time and because the campaign and stuff and doing all that political stuff.
Oh my gosh.
It doesn't stop.
It doesn't stop.
Yeah.
And I will say that, the campaign trail, I had to be really creative for my kids to make sure that we were getting enough time. And so doing this now has really been wonderful because
I imagine.
Yeah, in Matthew Southwest, we really are a place where everybody's like, get your stuff done. but the priority is family. And that's another reason it's a good place to work, right?
Yeah.
And everyone is like that. So I really am inside of a culture that respects and prioritizes family.
So, like, now that you have a family, like kids, young kids, and like how, like having that momentum and how are you able to slow down and just like, because you still have that ambition. The ambition doesn't go away.
You fill it in with other things.
Okay.
I mean, that's what happens. We are who we are.
Yeah.
And so people reach out, they need help with certain things. Mark Vesey, I was Mark Vesey's chief of staff. So when I worked on the Hill, I was the chief of staff to a member of Congress. His name is Mark Vesey. He represents Fort Worth and some of Dallas. And I laugh because so my last year with him was 2018, but people still call. I still end up doing constituent casework because people call with things that they need. And really what they're sourcing for is information. If somebody doesn't get something, through Medicare, if they're having a VA problem, right? Those are just all things I learned along the way. They know I know them. They know me from being around.
Instead of trying to figure it out, find out she knows it. And it's just easy. It's an easy win for them. It's
an easy one, and I'm happy to help. And so you never really walk away fully from it. Not if you were really in it for the right reason, because it's a part of you. It's never.
Well, that's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, it wasn't what. It's not. It's like it's not what I do. It's who I am.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I had a title. Don't have the title anymore, but it's still who I am. So I'm just gonna do that naturally. So, and my kids, like, they know that about me, and I always say, like,
so it makes
we're
sense.
here to help people,
It makes sense you flying out to Chicago now after hearing all of this.
Oh, yeah.
I get it now.
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah. So I had to be there. I mean, I looking at that.
That's your world.
It's
a part of it.
It's a part of it.
Yeah.
It's a part of it. It is a part of it. And things are changing. The Congress now is not the Congress that I was a part of. It's a very different place.
So since we're talking about that, what do you think about politics and where it's going? Because it's changing.
A race to the bottom.
Yeah.
That's where it's going.
All
of it.
All of it.
I will say this. I'm going to make this distinction, which I feel protective about. On the federal level, so first of all, the federal level is the appropriations, right? So federal level, you're looking at how much money do we have? What's our budget deficit? What do we have to fund? That is the congressional arm. You're creating law and you're appropriating dollars. From there, that money goes to the state. The state receives the money, then the state disperses the money to the municipalities, right? So federal is partisan, R against D. State is partisan, R against D. Municipalities, they are not partisan. And we have got to protect that because there are people, Republicans specifically, who are looking to push that line when it comes down to partisanship. But we need it to stay nonpartisan, and let me tell you why. Congress is gridlock, backed up. State levels, partisan.
You had to stop the whole process.
The beautiful thing about municipalities in 2024, I say they're more powerful than ever because they're getting the money. They're deciding where to put the money. Literally, like, this is your council people, right? They've received this federal funding. Then they're deciding on what to do with it. And they have that kind of power, right? Now, we can access, because they're at the local level. But if you were to put partisanship into that municipal level, then you might as well be at a state level, right? And you don't want that. You want things to be able to flow without, trying to have to align on some political ideology. So I think municipalities are now where it's at. I think municipalities in 2024 are more powerful than they ever have been due to the fact that there is so much gridlock on the federal and the state level.
But do you think it's completely that way at municipalities? It's
not that it is. So typically in business, you see a lot of corporations move in business, right? You see a lot of people who are well-to-do move in business. Typically, those people will align with wanting lower taxes, some of the ideological things are different, but just when we talk about the economics of things, would align in some cases with Republicans, right? So it's not completely out of it, but you don't have to operate under that structure, which is more freeing, and it allows.
You're not picking sides.
You don't have to pick sides like that, you know, and that's we need to keep that. Yeah, we need to preserve that. So, you know, I think social media changed politics forever, and the more, you know, the more we sort of automate things, I think works sort of against what should be happening.
Yeah. So, moving forward, what do you think you ever run again?
Well, I will say this: I have learned in life to never say never. That's, you know.
So is that like a
I'll put it to you like this.
That's like a almost full yes.
let me hold on. Let me say this.
Not right now.
It's like right now, today. What's today's date?
Why are you gonna do me like that? I don't even know what I wore yesterday.
Whatever it is.
I think it's the 22nd.
Let's just call it Friday.
Yeah, Friday.
No, I'm good.
No,
I'm
it's
good.
the 22nd.
I'm good. 23rd. I'm good. It's like today, like I'm loving. Like it's very interesting how life works, you know. But if you believe in God, you know He's gonna give you what you need.
Yeah.
So it's like I can't imagine really not doing what I'm doing right now. It feels so like being at Matthews Southwest, working on this huge convention center project, working in affordability, spending this precious time with my kids. My son just started kindergarten on Monday and my daughter is 9. It's perfect. It's been great, right? I'm not lacking anything. I don't feel like I really yearning for something. I'm able to enjoy the politics kind of, you know, from the outside, and I get to eat popcorn and like, oh, I don't have to worry about that today, you know? So there's something very freeing about it. But I had hard lessons. I had a lot of hard, hurtful lessons. The campaign was never the issue for me. You know, my getting in that runoff, I remember praying to God and saying, like, if I'm not going to win, I don't want to run off. It was like I prayed to not. But I ended up in a runoff anyway, right?
But that's just more lessons. It's like,
it was more lessons, and it was more interfacing with people who then I, you know, have relationships with now, right? And so, you know, it's really that life is so good to us. Yeah. You know, it's just about how you look at it, right? Because the best thing that ever happened to me was that I ran for Congress. I can tell you, I know myself in a way that people don't really have the opportunity to. Because, you know, when you really want something and somebody comes to you, and this happened, because I got to that runoff, and they were like, this man was basically like, you need to match our money, older person, and our agendas were not the same, like, at all. And I couldn't do it. You know, I took a pass. But that's when you learn yourself. Like if somebody has something you really want, what's your price? Yeah. And in politics,
you get that question.
It's always a price.
Yeah.
You're going to pay a price, you know? And for me, it was too high. It's just like if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it, you know? And so I learned that lesson the hard way. And again, it was more for me about relationships and people. You know, you want your people to be there for you when you need them. You know, you really do.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So, you know, you got to trust yourself. You got to know that, like, you know, it's God is the master architect. I can't say it enough. And I'm grateful for every experience that I have. It informs me in the work that I do now. This convention center is a big deal. You know, this. You
keep talking about the convention center.
Yeah. So Matthews Southwest was awarded as a developer for component 1 of the master plan for K. Bailey Hutchinson.
Yeah.
convention
So
center.
what's your role in that process?
So we are rebuilding the convention center. I spend time mostly at liaising with the city on what we need to get done. So being a point of communication there. Some operational things inside of our group, our team, which is called Inspire Dallas.
Are you learning? Are you learning a lot?
Oh my gosh, I'm learning something every day.
Yeah.
It's.
Do you feel empowered?
On your good days.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm just saying because these are like major
it's
projects. It's like if you like it doesn't go up from there. Like I mean,
It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's a lot. We are component one of 7 components. So there is the T-ball, there's the arena, there's Pioneer Plaza, there's the transportation aspect, there's Union Station, there's the land development aspect, and what you really learn and what I'm really learning is how city government interfaces with stakeholders. So that's like businesses, chambers, associations, how they interface with
a lot of red tape.
developers, with developers. Look, municipalities, they have their procedures, and you have to understand them and know them to get through them. And even when you do understand them and know them, you might need to help fix some things.
So that's what I was talking about. Do you feel empowered and are you learning? Because that's the stuff that gets things done, working through and knowing those things and having the knowledge of all of that.
That's
because
right.
That's how you break through.
That's correct. That is how you
Everything
break
else is just talk and whatever.
That's how.
So you were talking about Inspire Dallas and I cut you off.
Yeah, so Inspire Dallas is the team that's working, Matthew Southwest team that's working on Convention Center. We have 27 subs on this project, everything from engineers to people who do geotechnical work, demo work, like all of the things that you need to get something this major done. We have the best and the brightest at the table on this. And we're almost, something like, I want to say, close to 50% now of minority business owners. So, and that was something that Jack intentionally did to it was never about hitting the city's numbers. It was really about, how can we build capacity for others in this project, and how can we provide exposure? Because this is to date, this is the largest, public contract right now.
And it's one thing just to talk it. It's another thing to carry it out. And that's what I like about Jack.
Ooh.
He tells you about it after the fact.
Doesn't that go back to something I said earlier? After.
Yeah. About
Right?
moving in silence.
Moving in silence.
Yeah.
It's so powerful.
Yeah.
It's so powerful. Everybody doesn't need to know what you're doing.
Yeah.
But the right people do. And what I'm learning.
But the right people do.
That's right. That's right.
You snuck that in there, but that was powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. And what I'm also learning with Inspire Dallas is, like, I think the best and the brightest people are people who really are masterful collaborators, right? Like getting people with different agendas sitting in the room with one goal, That's hard.
But it's hard because everybody wants to, not everybody, but I find a lot of people want to just have their own thing. It's like they don't want to, like they think being associated with something, it takes something from them. But I think there's powerful when you take who you are, put it together. Look at Voltron. You remember Voltron, that cartoon?
Yeah. Yeah, of course. Exactly. But that's the thing. You can't, big projects, big problems are solved through collaboration. The more complex something is, the more you need to work on bringing people under the tent to get something done.
Yeah.
Yeah,
because you can't hold everything.
No.
Yeah.
And nor should you try.
That way it has to be distributed.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
So, I think I've asked you a whole lot. What's your social security number?
These days, Google it.
Google.
It's a dangerous world out here.
She said these days, Google.
It's horrible.
Just ask ChatGPT.
Right, exactly.
So I'm trying to think if there's anything. Is there anything else that you'd like to share?
No, not really. I don't think so. No, I'm just kidding. Well, I'm glad you're doing this, Walter. It's been a
thank you,
pleasure
thank you.
getting to know you, and
likewise.
I'm happy you're here in Southside.
Yeah.
You know, obviously, I'm biased towards this lovely incubator of sorts that we have at Southside. So happy to be here with you. I'm glad you're doing this and taking the time out to talk to people. I don't typically do these types of things, only because, you know, you got to take time out, and you're like, "Well, I was working," but I'm glad that I sat down with you.
I'm
so
glad.
thank you
I'm
for
glad
asking.
you did too. I'm glad you did
Yeah.
too. So, well, thank you for coming on the
Thank
show,
you.
Jane, the Hope Hamilton. Until next time, we'll see you on the Southside 457 podcast. Peace.
Southside 457.